Hey everyone, welcome back to this video series I'm doing on the new features announced in Tableau Conference 2019 in Las Vegas. If you didn't catch the first video, it was on dynamic parameters, and in this one we're going to take a look at animations. So let's get to it. Now, I've sort of been unsure myself about whether I wanted to see animations in Tableau. I've always kind of just had the thought that Tableau is here to show me data and not put things in the way and do extra stuff that's not needed, stuff that might distract me from the data that I'm trying to analyze. In some ways, I've moved my position recently, and I want to give you two examples of animations in the product currently in the pre-release site. So if you have access to Tableau's pre-release, there is an animations build that you can get from there, and that's what I'm using in this video. So the animations, or the chart types, I should say, animated, which I think add to my ability to do analysis. First off is how Tableau implemented the tree map animation. So I have a really basic tree map from Superstore here. Nothing special about it. Animations are turned on, and if I change the segment filter to consumer, we see that the marks animate between, and let me just slow this down for the video because that was a little too fast. So in the format menu, I should point out, there is a new animations option, and here you can set the workbook default for the speed and also the style. Okay, we'll take a look at the difference between simultaneous and sequential in a second. So for this one, let me just slow this down and let's go for a 1 second animation, and we'll flick back to all. Now, when I go to consumer, I noticed something that I probably would have missed had animations not been turned on. I know immediately, without really reading any of the labels, that these two marks change position and these two marks change position. Okay, now that's kind of important in the tree map because position equates to rank. So, for instance, I know that technology, these red technology ones, are number 1 or the highest amount, and are they? Because actually, 391049, yes, there. So I know these technology marks are the highest amount, followed by furniture, and then office supplies. And this kind of anti-clockwise rank applies in a tree map. So the position gives me an idea of rank, and knowing where marks move gives me an idea of how these segments change. So moving to corporate, we see a big change in that. The furniture has now gone down into third, with office supplies coming in second. And it's these little changes between that are much easier to catch with animations turned on. Obviously, color is an indicator that's pretty predominant, and if I turn the animation off, I'd probably be able to spot immediately that there's been the color order has changed, but then I've got to read the label and start to figure it out. And this is only flicking between a pretty basic breakdown of the data. So 3 different segments and 3 different categories. However, with animations on, I'm able to, my eye catches the movements that happen. Okay, like I say, without even reading the labels, I can see these two are switching. So in tree map and animations, I totally get it. It's adding to my ability to understand the difference between these segments and to sort of explore and keep in that flow of analysis. And the same applies for a scatterplot. So this time, instead of using filtering, I'm going to use the pages shelf. I've got year and quarter on pages, and I've basically drawn a really brief scatter plot of discount and profit. And we can hit play. And as this plays through, I'm able to follow again, where these marks are going. If there's one mark in particular, let's say I'm really interested in tables, I can really sort of get an idea of where it's moving about, how it's interacting between these two variables, and is there a sudden change? Does tables suddenly, as it just did, drop down to the bottom where it's been sort of kind of midway for all the previous quarters? So let's just play that again. And we can see that sort of tables hovers around that zero profit. It's kind of going down to the 2000, back towards zero, okay? And then there's this sudden decline in the last quarter that we just saw. So again, that's sort of exploring, watching where data points are going and interacting, in this case, through time. Animations absolutely adds to my ability to understand the data and to really sort of get into it. Now, we're going to move on to two examples that are how they're currently implemented, but before we do that, have a look at actually how it was presented on stage, because I think basically at the moment Tableau is slowly going through these different visualizations and are trying to decide what the best animation for each of them is. So I just want to flick to, this is kind of like meta, we're talking about devs on stage and I'm showing devs on stage recording. So I'm going to hit play on here because I just want to watch. This line is going to break down into different countries. Okay, this is how it was demoed last night. And we see that it goes from that single line and smoothly transitions, animates into the different each line different country, and that again, that makes a lot of sense to me. I can see it's a single mark, a single line, and I can start to get a grasp of how it's then changed as it's broken down. What the variance is, how big that's changed, and if there were lots of lines that were all breaking down, again, I would sort of, my eye would be able to follow without me really trying hard to do so. However, in the build as it exists right now, that animation is quite different. If I again break down by this time by ship mode and region, which is in Superstore, we'll see that this single line sort of fades out and 3 lines then or 4 lines then fade in. Same for there isn't this notion of one line breaking out. It's more of a sort of slide transition that's happening. There was a slide with 1 line and now that's faded out in a slide with 4 lines. So I get the feeling that the way to implement animations is constantly in flux with Tableau at the minute, and they're really trying to decide the best way to go for each different visualization. Another one that isn't quite on the mark right now is the bar chart. So there's lots of animations going around the web, going around Twitter, of sort of that race to the top bar chart. So people playing through time, maybe the number of users on social media platforms, or the number of points scored over the year by a football team or something. And I think what people sort of expect is that when they start and play, that these different values will rearrange. They'll sort depending on where we are in time. But we see that's not happening, because currently how pages are implemented is they don't. The sort happens on the entire data set, and then it's broken down into the different pages. So there is no difference in the sorting between those different pages, which means we get this bar chart that's looks unsorted. It's actually not unsorted. If I was to remove year and quarter from the pages shelves, we see it is all these subcategories are properly sorted. However, they're not sorted based on the page. So, again, is there something that needs to be done back at Tableau HQ to say, well, do we need a new sort order so that we can sort based on both the measure and the dimension that's in play, but also the page that's currently active? Because when I think of this animation and this and bar charts, I can't help thinking of this example. So this was presented at a Tableau conference, I believe. At least there was a video that looks about it, but at least a blog post by Ludovic, and he shows how, you know, the animations going between these different bars, and we see as we go through time, the bars and the labels move because the values are changing the sort order depending on the time of the year that we're in. And I think this is what people will think when they think of animating a bar chart, you know, how it should happen, how they're going to explain the story of, say, the race between China and India right now in population. So, like I say, animations seem to be currently in flux a little bit right now in Tableau. I think some of the charts are absolutely spot on with helping me understand how the data changes, you know, as I move through time, or as I change filters or something, and keeping my eye on where the data is going. In other cases, especially such as trying to sort using the pages shelf, it really just isn't quite there, and I don't think it is basically what people would expect. But, you know, this is a pre-release. Like I said in the previous video, you know, this is just how Tableau's currently implemented it. Clearly with devs on stage, they've got new ideas in terms of that line chart and how it's going to be animated. And I'm really excited to see what they come out with next. Finally, just sort of to add one in there, and I'm sure this is going to be a bit of a debate that's potentially raging. It was raised by my colleague Tim about sort of the whole notion of are these animations at all? So Tim's very much of the idea that these aren't animations, these are transitions. And so the transition tends to be a very sort of stop-start implementation, whereas an animation will have lots of intermediary phases that aren't necessarily in the data or not, you know, driven by the user. Personally, I don't understand enough about the subject to sort of make a call on whether it's an animation or a transition. Tim has been with it for quite a while, and he's very much of the opinion that it's a transition. So Tim, I'm happy to sort of hand off to you to make the decision between the two. If you want to keep that debate going on Twitter, be sure to, I'm sure, message Tim, and he'll love to have a great conversation with you about it. All right, until the next video, see you next time.